Hello and welcome to another episode of Historically Marked. This is the Cemeteries with Markers edition, and I am in Coldwater Creek Cemetery, which is in Florissant, Missouri, pretty much on the north side or on the outskirts of Florissant, just off of Old Halls Ferry Road. And behind me is what is believed to be the oldest Protestant cemetery that is still in use today. Now, I don't really know how true that is, but I mean, a lot of historians kind of came to a conclusion on that one. And this used to be known as the Patterson burial ground, and this has a lot of traces that date back to early Methodism. And there's a couple notable markers I'd like to show you. So, all right, I am ready. Here we go. On this left gate right here, that number is actually 9 wars, not 7. I'll explain more on that. And here's the Daughters of the American Revolution marker. So getting around the cemetery, you're better off going that way and then kind of going around, and then you end up back here. This plaque right here talks about how on May 31st, 2004, that it became listed on the National Register of Historic Places by the Missouri State Society Daughters of the American Revolution. And here's a special historical stone. I will show you Reverend John Clark's grave site in a minute, but this pretty much talks about the first Methodist church in Missouri. Reverend John Clark, buried nearby, held the first Protestant service in Missouri in 1798. In 1805, he organized in this vicinity the first Methodist class in Missouri, which was the beginning of the Coldwater Circuit from which Methodism spread westward. This memorial, erected in 1969, by the Historical Societies of the Missouri East and Missouri West Annual Conferences of the United Methodist Church. And according to the Daughters of the American Revolution website, there are 29 veterans from 9 different wars. Yes, 9 different United States wars are buried here. And these are some of the memorials. So, interesting stuff. I'll just kind of give you a little down pan on that. And this was erected in 1976, which of course was the year of America's bicentennial, in memory of the veterans buried herein and all other unmarked graves, a bicentennial project. Now, several of these stones are very old, but I will show you a marker that is just right over there. And at the north part of the cemetery is this stone that was placed here in 1999. It's the original site of Coldwater Church, now Salem Baptist Church, on property owned by John Patterson and donated by the Patterson family. Established in 1809. So unfortunately, I was not able to find the final resting place of John Patterson Sr. He is buried here, but as I was looking on findagrave.com, I see where they put like a newly revised Veterans Memorial on top of his resting place, but I was not able to find it. And the cemetery is so small that it was kind of like a needle in a haystack. But there are plenty of Pattersons buried here. But I will give you a backstory on the Patterson family. So John Patterson Sr. was from the Carolinas, and he migrated his family here. He fought in the American Revolutionary War, and he was given some land under a Spanish land grant, and this was under Spanish land rule at the time in 1797. But the Spanish were Catholics, and this new breed of settlers, being Protestant, meaning the Pattersons, was difficult for the Spanish to understand. The Pattersons did retain their Protestant faith through the services of a Methodist minister known as Father Clark, who is buried right there. I will show you his grave in just a second. So that is why the first Protestant church was made right here on this land. And again, this is believed to be the oldest Protestant place west of the Mississippi River in the United States of America. So right here is the final resting place for Reverend John Clark. So a little bit more background on Reverend John Clark. He was probably the first Protestant minister to preach on this side of the river, well, side of the Mississippi River. And at the turn of the century, he was making regular visits to the settlements along Coldwater Creek, which is just not too far from here. So how did he migrate here? Well, according to the Daughters of the American Revolution, and I'm crediting them for this, pretty much he crossed the Mississippi from Illinois to Missouri at night to be met on the other side by a covert connection, who would ride with him to a secret spot arranged by the Pattersons. Before dawn, Clark would slip back across the river before being captured and prosecuted for his hearsay of promoting Protestantism. The scene was repeated hundreds of times until the attitude softened and the hierarchy became more sympathetic to Protestants. Legend is that an 8-cornered Methodist church in the shape of a cross was established, and a cemetery, which was to become the Coldwater Cemetery, was established on the circumference of the church grounds. So the original church was destroyed by fire, and a second church was built, but it didn't take, it took a long time actually. It took about 38 years to complete the meeting house and the Coldwater Church. But the church was said to be used by the Methodist, Baptist, and an early Presbyterian congregation. Now, nobody really knows for sure, but the second church is believed to have burned as well. The church disappeared, but the cemetery endured. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Historically Marked, a Cemeteries with Markers edition. I am in North St. Louis County, outside Florissant on the north end, in Coldwater Creek Cemetery, and a very sacred burial ground. And I'm glad to show you some history here. And so, for those who are wanting to visit this place, it is a one-horse road that takes you up here, and you'll see signs when you're off of Old Halls Ferry Road. So, just a little tip there. But I am Jason for Historically Marked, signing off.